Chris Williams covers Iowa State, Cyclone fanatic. He joins us on 365 Sports. Iowa State, despite ups and downs, but they have been hot enough to put themselves in position. Saturday's game is big. Texas leads the Big 12 outright. The Horns come to Ames to take on the Cyclones. I want to start with this, Chris. Iowa State offensive lineman Jared Hufford made some comments about Ames and Iowa State at home against Texas, and that got a lot of play, of course, as you could imagine, around college football. Texas fans in our chat room have been kind of interested in that. Did that bring up anything at all in Ames?
Not really. Not that I've been aware of. I mean, listen, I don't think it's any secret that Iowa State fans don't like Texas, and why, who could blame them? How many, you guys know, as Baylor guys, I mean, God, how many times over the years has these schools had a proverbial gun to their head because of Texas, right? So, I mean, if there's a Texas fan that doesn't understand why an Iowa State player wouldn't like him, I can't really help you. I mean, and I would also add that if Steve Sarkisian's team needs that to get fired up to play to go win a national championship, then what does that say too? I think it's fun in the middle of the week. I don't think it'll matter come Saturday.
So what's this week been like, Chris? I mean, what kind of an anticipation level is there for this game, and how much of the backdrop of the fact this is likely the last time? This is the last time for the Longhorns in Ames, and then there's some stakes involved as well. How much of a build-up do you feel for this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the fans and stuff, it certainly is a big deal, the Texas angle. I don't necessarily – I don't know. I think with the program, it's definitely more, hey, you guys have a chance to win a Big 12 championship still. It's an outside chance, but it's still a chance. And for this program that had the unfortunate gambling thing in the off season, and then, it's a long off season, guys, with that, all the realignment. It's just been, for a young team, I was doing my numbers this week, guys, and Iowa State's going to have 20 starters back next year. So, they're really young, the amount of freshmen and sophomores playing on this group. So they've been through a lot. You got to realize a lot of those guys who are out with the gambling stuff, it opened up spots, including the quarterback spot, for younger guys to step in. So I think they're focused on that. The rest of it, Texas is not going to get a warm welcome in here, and why should they? That's when you do this, when you guys know with realignment, when it happens, this is part of it, and I don't really have a lot of sympathy for Texas and Oklahoma. They made their bed, and they're going to be cashing checks here coming forward in the SEC, and good for them. I just don't have a lot of sympathy when, the fans are going to boo you. Yeah, of course they will. Just kind of part of the deal, and they will get a rude. They will not. I'm sure the Iowa State fans will not be kind. You also have to think of it this way, too, guys. There's an extra chip on Iowa State fans' shoulders towards this stuff because there's just, not the richest fan base. It's very blue collar. You're going to see a lot of Carhartt overalls on Saturday night. And it's just different. And I love going to Austin. I'm not nothing personal against them. I'm going to really miss making that trip. It's a phenomenal stadium, great tradition. But Iowa State fans see themselves as the polar opposite of what a Texas fan is. If that's fair or not, I have no idea. But they don't, that is just kind of how it is, and they've thought that way for a really long time. It was kind of we had this cool Big 8 thing going, and then all these Texas schools came in, and right, and it was mutually beneficial for television. We all know all that, but I'm just putting you in the mind of the, Story County farmer that's going to be sitting there with a few bush lights deep on Saturday night. Yeah, they'll be fired up.
Chris, do you expect to see Iowa State throw a little bit more in this game than maybe they normally would, given Texas is so good against the run, but that secondary is susceptible? That's
I think Iowa State has learned that while it can be an effective run team, it's got to pass first. That's been the case against every defense this year, let alone this Texas front that's just, if I was Jared Hufford, I may have looked across the line before I made those comments.
Right.
Right. But, I mean, I think Iowa State in that loss to Texas I think they got a little complacent. I think that, they had run the ball fairly well in the games prior to that. And I think that they thought they could go in there and establish the run early and do all that. And they couldn't have been more wrong. This is a team that needs to pass first, and then hopefully it spreads out of defense and that you can run. And I would fully expect, Iowa State to come out and throw it. It's not Matt Campbell like to throw it 50 times in a game, but I think they're certainly going to have to. That's how I break down this game, guys. It's just up front, Iowa State's really going to be, I think, in trouble both ways. So you've got to find ways to, change this thing up a little bit. Iowa State's going to have to win turnovers. You're going to have to be perfect on special teams. And, I think you turn your young quarterback loose. You've got some weapons at wide receiver. You might have the best freshman tight end in all of college football. And you're going to have to let them – and then hopefully, with that, you can start running the ball a little bit more in the second half. That's got to be the game plan.
Chris, when it comes to that passing game, the young quarterback there who's had to grow up a lot this season, Rocco Becht, put up good numbers with the top freshman passer in the country. Just what have you seen as far as his development, the confidence, and just sort of the feel around him when it comes to this team and what they're doing moving forward?
I love him. He reminds me so much of Brock Purdy, and I know that's not fair. I'm not saying he'll be what Brock is in the NFL, but he's so smart. I was doing the math the other night from Pro Football Focus, and when the line has properly protected him this year, he's completed like 73% of his passes and has only thrown one interception. So he really sees the field well. I don't know if your listeners know his dad's background, but his dad's an old NFL tight end and is the head coach of an XFL team.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got this pedigree that's just exactly what you look for in a quarterback. And that's the thing about him, guys. He's just like his intangibles are off the charts for what a freshman brings to. He doesn't have the biggest arm. He's kind of short for a quarterback, but we heard the same things about Purdy, and that's the type of quarterback that Campbell, I think we're learning is really good at, building an offense for. And again, I'm not saying he's going to be top 5 quarterback in the NFL or wherever you would put Brock right now, but he's that same style of guy. And when Brock came in as a freshman, you saw the same type of thing. And he's the type now where they've put in a lot of design quarterback run. I think that'll be huge on Saturday night, because I just don't think Iowa State can hand off the ball to the running back and expect to run the ball against Texas. No way. I just don't see any scenario on that happen. So if they are going to run the ball, Rocco has proven now over the last couple of weeks that he's a guy that can do that.
Is it one of those that Iowa State's going to need a couple of breaks, or at least somehow Texas drops one on the ground, or they get a break, or force a turnover or two?
I think so, because Iowa State plays this weird defense, right? And with the 3 down linemen, and they're good up front this year, but they don't have Will McDonald. Okay, so they've struggled to get pressure with 3 as often this year, and kind of I just don't believe Iowa State's going to be able to just straight up run the football. I don't think they're going to be able to line up 3 guys and get pressure on Quinn Ewers either against that Texas offensive line. So John Haycock's going to have to get really exotic. And with that, it can force some turnovers. Some quarterbacks, like the kid from BYU last week, lost his mind when he saw that look. Quinn Ewers, I would expect more out of. But, it feels to me maybe you block a punt. I don't think it'll be a fluke. Listen, Texas the last month has not been great. They've got out to these big leads and lost them, and they've had a lot of chances to lose games. So they're not invincible. But, the matchup in me, when I break it down, I think Texas wins by 10. But then I also been to these weird night games in Ames, and weird stuff happens, and, that snowball gets rolling, and it's going to be a really lively crowd, and it's going to be nice out, but it's still November in Central Iowa for a Texas team. Weird things can happen. So I think Iowa State doesn't have to play perfect, but they're going to have to force some Texas errors if they're going to get out of this one with them.
How much has the loss of Jonathan Brooks at least come into play? They have a 5-star. Baxter's a great talent. He can go too. He's busted loose, but to not have Jonathan Brooks, they have other weapons, but he was special.
I think it's a really big deal because this Iowa State secondary is the strength of its team when it's healthy, and they're getting Jeremiah Cooper back, who has been out. I think he actually went out in the back half of that Baylor game, and they haven't had him since. And he was an All-American candidate leading up to that guy. He's one of the leaders in interceptions in the country, and I think they're getting him back. And listen, I know. Listen, and this backup will come and run for 200 now, but he still hasn't seen as much live football. I mean, it does matter, right? Like it's a big deal, especially with an Iowa State defense where I think you're going to have to pick your poison, right? Like, what do you want to stop? Especially with the issues I just laid out. So even if it's a downgrade, if you're going from a 5-star to a 4-star, I still think that could really matter in this football game. Because the one thing is, it's like, guys, if you line up player by player, Texas is more talented across the board. There's no doubt about it. But this John Haycock is a really good coordinator, as you well know. And he'll have something ready for them. And then it'll be, if they do put the ball on the ground, where does the bounce go, right? Like, if Ewers throws one up in the air, can you take advantage and can you get it? Then it comes down to execution. I think Iowa State will have a good game plan.
Chris, not involving the game, but involving the future of the Big 12. You saw the schedule released, a lot of hand-wringing about the fact that they did not protect Kansas State and Iowa State, a.k.a. Farmageddon. As far as the rivalries, they'll have, Arizona State, Baylor, TCU, Utah, BYU, but not Iowa State, Kansas State. I saw a lot of backlash on Twitter, but on your end, was there a lot of anger about that? Just your feelings on that not being one of the protected rivalries moving forward?
Yeah, there was, and I got to be honest and admit when I'm wrong sometimes. I didn't we were on the air when it happened, and I didn't even react. Oh, okay. But the fans were really upset about it. I guess I am of the opinion where my biggest thing, guys, with Iowa State is I wanted to protect as much as possible the old Big A. And I include Colorado in that. Like, whatever. Like, they left for a while, they're back. But I just wanted to see Iowa State have, as much Oklahoma State, Colorado, Kansas State on the schedule as possible. But it's really hard to make a schedule with 16 teams.
Yep.
And, I think they did a pretty good job. Like, all those teams that I just listed, Iowa State will play 3 of 4 years. The one thing that sucks is I think that's the longest running rivalry in college football right now. If it's not, it's like the second longest. So you are giving up on some history there. And that's a bummer. But for some reason, and I do not know why, the two athletic departments at Iowa State and Kansas State have never embraced it. They've never, that should be a trophy game in my, have it be a big John Deere tractor. John Deere can have the naming rights to it and call it Farmageddon. And the fans love it. The fans eat it up. These two athletic departments have never taken that step. So it tells me they probably didn't fight for it in the room, much like I'm guessing Baylor and TCU did, right? So, for some reason it didn't happen. I didn't react that strongly to it, but I can tell you I whiffed on the fan base because the fan base ticked off.
Oh, yeah. No, they did. We saw that, a lot of the reaction. Hey, Chris, appreciate the insight, the truth serum, also your knowledge. Enjoy the game Saturday night, Texas in Ames against Iowa State. And one more hurdle for UT, one step closer to a Big 12 championship game appearance, and Iowa State can really put a big, huge wrench at all of them.
Whew, man, that would be something if Iowa State could jump up and pop them. That would be great.